Good evening, everyone. My name is Stuart Davis. I am a flawed man of God. I am a deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar. I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. What I am here to do is talk about Jesus. So if you are interested in serving or learning more about Christ, if you are an unbeliever right now and you are curious about learning more about him, welcome to the program. We're glad to have you along. If you are already a believer and you just want to talk about Christian topics, get a Christian worldview, here we are. That's what we do here. We talk about the religious aspect of many things that are within the church and outside of the church, current events, anything. And we do Bible readings as well, kind of a react from my perspective. But glad to have you here. Obviously, I've got a bunch of folks with me, and I know by the amount of people in the in the chat that we know that where they're generally coming from. So yes, if you're wondering why the Levitical law in chapter 18, verse 22 was broken, it's from Nick. So we were waiting on him. So
it was literally my fault. Yeah.
So tonight, very special episode. Obviously, I've got some great guests here, and we're going to be talking about homeschooling. So who I've got with us, I've got Christian Mario here. He is if you're on Twitter, if you're within the Christian Twitter sphere, he is a very funny dude to follow. I highly recommend following him on there. There's great memes. He's one of the most based Zoomers I've come across, and it truly is awesome watching him go to work. I think he might be a crypto egalitarian, but I'm not sure. So
no, lies.
Also with me is a good friend of mine, a good friend of Nick's, Raf. Also goes by the Rafture. He's been on the show a couple of times before. He is our resident Roman Catholic. So we have asked him before the show to remove any Marian idols, and he has agreed to do so.
You should stop being a Roman Catholic and just plant yourself somewhere, buddy.
Oh, I get
walking, Roman.
I've heard that one before, I think.
Finally, we got Nick. Obviously, big blessing here to have him on as a buddy who, me and Raf can say that we knew Nick before the YouTube, and it's been awesome to have him come on here and see how far his channel has gone from just a dude shit posting on a Facebook channel with or Facebook page with some awesome takes and always making us laugh to putting it on video and really just being somebody that people recognize. Because I was talking about this. Christian Mario was on the other Paul's broadcast, and I dropped down that we were going, and the other Paul was like, "Wait, what? You're going to be on Rekieta's coming on your channel? Oh, I got to see this." So, hey, we're all proud of you, buddy. So,
thank
glad
you.
to have you on.
Well, now that Nick's here, I don't think the night would be absolutely proper unless we had a toast to the invention of cement, the invention of trucks, and I just mourn our friend Tyler Jones, who may or may not have gone to Christ. This is a Christian channel.
We're working on getting him there, but yeah, to Tyler Jones, our friend, our colleague, our brother in memory, and the damn that cement trunk that killed him.
Taken from this world way too soon. Way too soon.
Amen. Clip it. All right.
That is without question the single funniest 3 days of my entire life. I mean, there is nothing even close to, people don't realize we mined a Himalayan salt mine out of about 12 people who lost their flipping brains over that. Oh,
the
God,
entire
it was great.
Dick Masterson Facebook page just lost their ever loving minds. Mods
Yeah.
were removed. Fun was removed. It was the begin. I think it was the beginning of the end of all the fun things. But I mean,
Yeah.
what a watershed moment for us.
Maybe at the end of the show we should talk about it or something. It was so funny. Oh man.
All right, so to keep us on topic, now that we can get all the inside jokes out of the way, we are going to talk about homeschooling, and one of the reasons why I wanted to get this on here is because I started to notice that a lot of the people I interact with on a daily basis, you don't realize that they've been homeschooled. And when I was coming up, I came up through public school, and I came up through a pretty decent public school. My dad was on the local board of supervisors. He invested heavily in education when I was young, and we became a location that was very and is still very coveted for its public school system. We're pretty good, and so we always kind of looked down on homeschool kids because we had the stigma that they're weird, they're awkward, their parents are like Amish or something like that, and that's how you grew up thinking about them. But
these little happy mutants running around
exactly
in their hand-me-down clothes, and they're walking around with Bibles under their arms.
Oh man,
little miscreants.
Yeah, we just think they're all Mormons, but you end up going out and getting into the real world, and you realize, and you come across somebody like, yeah, I was homeschooled, and you're like, really? And then you listen to people talk about it and really do a good apologetics for homeschooling. And then you realize it's like, okay, a lot of people just don't know what in the world they're talking about. And what we've seen with COVID has been a lot of people waking up to what's going on in public schools, even public schools like my public school system, even in good public school systems, to the point where you're like, where am I sending my kids now? And so now we've got a homeschool thing going on, and people are like, what do I do? What do I need to do? And is it something I can do? So we're just going to go around and get some perspectives, because we've got a couple of folks on here who have been homeschooled. Nick, if you're a fan of him, you know he does homeschool, and his family seriously homeschools because they've got like a mini flock down up there in Minnesota. But I've got two kids. I'm pulling them out of public school. I'm lucky enough that the church that I belong to, we host a very good Christian private school, and so I've just got that advantageous inroads there. And so my plan is to send them there, but that's where it has. So we're going to go around and just kind of get everybody's background on where they've been and what they're planning on doing. So. Nick, you're the oldest. We'll start with.
Throw me under the bus.
Well,
Are you sure?
I'm
Are you sure it's not Captain Krypton over here who's the oldest? Maybe he ages differently.
I think I think it works that you go back in time. Wasn't Krypton like way in the future? They had laser
I don't
guns and
know.
stuff.
Nerd.
I don't know, but if you hear like a school bus of children going over a cliff or whatever, don't worry. Just step away for a second. When you come back, just make sure your cape's not on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no phone booths anymore. There's nowhere to change.
Well, that means you have to just put your cell phone in front of your pelvis when you change in public, and so you block things out. So anyway, I'll try and I had to say pelvis. So okay, so I was mostly public schooled growing up. So my background, I was born down in Houston, Texas, in the city limits. I went to Inwood Forest Elementary first. First I went to America's Choice Daycare, because where else would you go other than America's Choice, where they yell at kids, where they beat kids, where they force feed you Jell-O till you vomit on yourself, make you clean it up so you can't eat Jell-O for the rest of your life. To when the toilet floods in the bathroom, they blame the kid rather than the garbage plumbing, and they steal your Transformers. Really the best daycare, truly tremendous. I think it's still there, right at Gulf Bank in Little York in Houston, Texas. So I went there, and I did a a pre-kindergarten program that was supposed to make me skip kindergarten. And then the kids the year before me skipped kindergarten, but they got to first grade and were all too stupid to pass first grade. So then they punished us by making us go the extra year of kindergarten anyway, which I didn't think was fair because they didn't ask if we were too stupid to pass through first grade. This is probably good because I was a little shrimpy kid and I would have been even smaller by a whole year if I were ahead. So then I went to Inwood Forest Elementary School, then Stovall Elementary School. Then I moved to Minnesota, which was where I met white people for the first time. Because in Houston there weren't any.
He became white. That's the spoiler alert.
It's like when you realize that Steve Martin in The Jerk is black. That was me, except the opposite. I got up to Minnesota. I was like, I'm white. Oh, this is weird. So I was in public school, but I actually skipped 1 year that I didn't mention. In second grade, I did go to a Christian private school. And I hated every second of it until I went back to public school and I desperately wanted to go back to the private school. So that was that. But then I finished up public school in Lakeville, Minnesota, and went to college and stuff like that. But now my wife and I have 5 kids and they are homeschooled. We have been through all sorts of phases of homeschooling. There are many. Well, for us, at least, there are many phases of homeschooling. There's like the hyper diligent phase of homeschooling. And then there's like the, maybe we get through a math lesson today phase of homeschooling. And the other phase where I think is a happy medium where you realize just how much kids learn, regardless of what the curriculum is and how they're able to learn different skills and different abilities from various things that they do and combining with the homeschooling. And then finally, the other aspect of our homeschool experience is I teach. Our kids go to a homeschool co-op, which is twice a month during the school year. And that's where families get together and our kids get like a classroom experience. And the classes that they get to take there are more like elective classes, special skills and stuff that are taught by the parents. For example, I teach the Constitution to junior high and high schoolers most of the times. Sometimes I teach them criminal law and they ask me only questions about cannibalism. I'm not sure why. But yeah, that's this little extra thing that we get to do where kids get a little more socializing and a little more interaction. And then finally, the other aspect of it, because I'll head this off. A lot of people think homeschooling kids are weird because they never hang out with anybody or whatever. That's up to the parents. Our kids do so many extracurricular activities that I actually had to hire someone to drive them around because it was that ridiculous. As to how much they do. They go to piano and violin and they do theater and they do band and they do science classes that are offsite and stuff like that. So that's my background. Is that what we're asking? Is that what we're trying to do? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
It was probably way longer than you wanted.
No, that's pretty good. That's pretty good where you're at. Raph, you want to go next?
Sure. So my parents are both Marines, so we moved around a lot. Also, they were Marine JAGs, so they knew just how crummy people can be, and they were afraid of allowing, myself and my brothers and sisters, I'm the oldest of 5, being in the hands of someone else for, long periods of time where we're vulnerable. So, another thing that they noticed was I did spend 1 year, first grade, in a Catholic school. And, I finished the year out and Dad noticed that I could read it better at the beginning of the year. So he was like, well, we were doing better when he was, 4 and 5 with him being at home. And, we're just going to keep having kids and we'll figure this out. We'll figure this out. So, we actually got started with the Seton Home Study Program, which is an accredited school. So after I finished homeschooling through high school, I actually got a high school diploma. So that's another stigma against homeschoolers is like, oh, then they're going to have to go get a GED, or they're not going to have something that they can go get employed with, which is false. You know, homeschools actually do get accredited, and you can go and take all of your standardized tests just like they make everybody take, and you can, you know, get your scores and get into college really easily. But one thing that my parents really inculcated in me is if we get all of our work done fast and well, then we don't have to spend time like wasting on it, redoing it over and over again, or waiting around. Because one thing that I remember hating about first grade was all the time waiting in lines and hallways, just, you know, not doing anything. And I would see my little sisters getting to go to the zoo after they finished all of their, you know, quick book work or whatever, and spending the afternoon at the science museum. I would say, man, I wish I could have done that. All I did was wait around in hallways all day. And it was really neat. And then kind of what Nick was saying, there's different phases of homeschooling. So when you're a kid, like a little kid, you do need that help from mom or dad, you know, getting through your schoolwork. But once you learn how to learn, you begin to be able to teach yourself. And you can, you know, you're like, I remember mom would entrust the older kids, you know, older being probably older than 9 or 10, with their curriculum, because you know how to read, you know what they're telling you to do throughout the day, you know where you're supposed to be throughout the semester. So as long as she comes in and makes sure you're on track, you're getting your work done, and then she can come up with something fun to do. And then as you get even older and you're able to teach the younger kids, like mom can go do something on her own, and you help teach the younger kids after you
Like
finish
drink
your
wine.
schoolwork. What was that?
Like drink wine.
Yeah. No, my mom went and wrote a book.
First
Oh my
grade.
gosh.
Yeah, if anybody wants a really good entry to Spanish, Learn Spanish with Grace was written by my mother, and it is a Christian take on like first and second year Spanish, and it's fantastic. If you want to hear what my voice sounded like when I was before I hit puberty, there's CDs with me singing on it. But if it makes my mom any money, I'll open myself to that embarrassment.
Oh,
But-
I'm buying it immediately.
Go to Quiet Waters Production.
You're gonna have to link that. You're gonna have to link that and buy
It's getting put on the soundboard.
Yeah.
I can see it now.
PlantWatersProduction.com.
All right, and Raph, you've got a young son, a very young son.
Yes.
Obviously. And what are your plans for him when he gets to be school age?
Oh, we definitely plan on homeschooling. My wife is she's a nurse, and so what she has done, because she's brilliant and super
She watching the stream?
Yeah, she is watching the stream. But I was gonna say this anyway. She's absolutely wonderful in her problem solving skills, and she said, you know what, I can switch to working 1 or 2 nights a week instead of having like my full-time day job, and I'll be able to stay at home and essentially be a stay-at-home mom. So that would allow me to do my day job gig, and she's going to make sure that my son and any future progeny get a proper education safely and effectively, because you know no one's going to be more invested in your children's future than you are. There's studies that have been done, and the bar is so low for really educating children. All you have to do is pay attention and care about your kid, and no one's going to do that better than a parent. And the results are, I can't remember exactly which universities put this out, but it's like homeschooled kids that actually put in the work and the time to develop study habits, consistently do far better on like the ACT, the SATs. They finish college at a higher rate. They get like I remember the employment opportunities are not hindered by the fact that you're homeschooled. So there's really no downside to it, as long as you have good parents who are going in it for the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get into more of that later on.
Real quick,
yeah.
Someone in the chat asked one thing from my background that I forgot to mention. They asked why we chose to do homeschooling. And just briefly, our oldest was reading at 2, which I don't know how or why, like what's wrong with him. But he could read, he knew all of his letters and everything, but he could actually read words at 2 years old. And we're like, or no, wait, he was reading at 4. Sorry, he was reading at 4, not 2. He knew all his letters by 2, but he was reading at 4 years old, full words. He was typing on keyboards and stuff. So that's when we were like, what's this kid going to do if he goes into public school? I mean, there's no way he can actually go in and go back to learning ABCs, learning shapes, learning colors. He knew it all. We didn't like push him or anything like that. He just, for whatever reason, had a grip on letters and language. So that's why we started homeschooling. That was the main reason, was because you can't put a kid that's that far ahead in kindergarten if you don't have to, because there won't be anything for him to do. So just wanted to add that. Sorry.
No. And yeah, I mean, that's a big thing is, when you have parent or when you become a parent is trying to figure, and they start to get older and they start learning things like maybe finding your Warhammer books and starting to read them. I don't know, Nick. I don't know what kind of reading materials they have around there. I just assume it's a Salamander's book, but I mean, it's something that you kind of get concerned about, especially when you're like, is my kid going to be starting to be held back? Because a bored kid can oftentimes turn into an unruly kid if they're not being challenged at school. And so, but let's get to Mario.
So I wish I could say that my parents homeschooled me because I was so advanced, but that was not the case. I went to I think it was like a Lutheran or Baptist school first. Something I think it was Baptist. I don't really remember. But I went to a Baptist school and I was getting in trouble a lot. I couldn't pay attention. I'd get in trouble for being rambunctious. And I remember one week I picked up a snake. I found a snake in the playground. I started picking it up and playing with it and shoving it at girls and stuff and scaring them and doing all that. And my parents had enough. They'd gotten so many reports about how childish I'd been. They're like, we need to homeschool this kid. He's just out of control. So they started homeschooling me. And at first I was very embarrassed by the fact I was homeschooled to all my neighborhood friends and stuff. But over time, I grew to really appreciate it because I was able to actually start doing well in school. I stopped feeling stupid. I feel like when I was in private school, I felt dumb. I felt like I wasn't capable. But when I started being homeschooled, I started feeling a lot more confident in my ability to study and read and learn and do things like that. So it ended up being a really good process for me. And I went to a co-op bi-weekly, and that helped maintain some structure and get me classroom time. But overall, all the attention from my parents, I think it ended up paying off. So,
yeah, and one of the things I want to say, so you're in college right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Raph, I know you graduated from college. Nick, I know you were graduated from college. I did not graduate from college. I did the Army route. I did some college. I spent some time at Longwood University, which is famous for being the venue for the Pence and I can't even remember his name now, and he was the senator in our state. Pence and Tim Kaine, yeah, Pence and Tim Kaine.
Creepy Tim Kaine
debate. Yeah, it was awful, which was great. So, but to go backwards. So Mario, my history starts kind of like yours. When I was in preschool, I was trying to do something. The teacher said I shouldn't do it. So when she picked me up because I said no, I broke her arm. And
You okay? Wow.
So I was
Well,
kicking. She was like picking me up, and I was kicking, and and she's old and frail and brittle, and it became an issue. So
that's kind of badass. You broke her arm.
Yeah.
Like, hey, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. You like pull out a cigarette or like right after that? That would have been awesome.
You like burn her
story to tell all the kids, right? But I ended up being I was a public school all the way kid. I was a case study for ADHD kids back in the late 80s and early 90s, and I had a lot of problems with behavior and trying to figure things out. A lot of the stuff that they did to develop, I guess, the newer versions of Ritalin, Adderall, and all that stuff, that came from me and a bunch of other kids my age who also didn't know how to act. And so I had a hard time. I was sarcastic, and I was argumentative, and I wanted to fight anytime somebody picked on me. So I just had behavior problems left and right. And the sad thing was, I think if my mom had the resources or the encouragement, because she'd tell you right now, she was like, I couldn't homeschool you. I'm not smart enough to homeschool you. And that was something I've heard on Nick's stream before when Nick's talked about homeschooling, that we'll get into a little bit. But she did not have the confidence to do that. But so she went back to work. Once I was in elementary school, she was working for the local school system, and things trying to evened out a little bit. But to describe the county I live in, we are the big red county in Virginia. It's in central Virginia. It's Hanover County, and we are the only school system that routinely pass our standardized testing. And we are consistently targeted by the Lebanon City paper as a bunch of racists and hateful people. But it always really brings like a bunch of people who wish they lived here, but don't want to because they don't want to go with the stigma of living in a red county. The middle school I went to was Stonewall Jackson Middle School. We were the rebels. My high school that we went to was the Lee Davis Confederates, and that was our name all the way up until the protests of 2020. In which case, we did have some school board members who decided that it would be better to rename my alma mater, and so it is no longer Lee Davis. It is no longer Stonewall Jackson, and it is sad.
They brought you onto the right side of history, didn't they?
Look, Richmond is
right on over.
Richmond is rich in Civil War history. It is big time what we talk about. I grew up on a Civil War campground. I live on an old artillery line. I mean, that's what we have. So it's just big steep in our history. All the monuments from Monument Avenue are gone now. And based on whatever your politics are, it's still kind of a shame to see something that's kind of a landmark come down just because people were bullied people were bullied into it. But that's the city that made that decision. That's their tourist revenue. That's their burden to deal with. But that is what it is. But my plan for my kids is to put them into Christian school. I mentioned that earlier. Me and my wife are both have very well-established careers. We are very happy with our careers trajectory. And while we do have my in-laws do live in our house with us, they are elderly, and we don't want to put the strain of a kid like me, which is my oldest son, putting a kid like me under their responsibility to teach. So that is what it is on that end. So I am the kind of the neutral subject here. I am very open to homeschool, and I would probably if we had the opportunity. But I think that the folks I've brought in are all going to be great examples of why homeschooling is an excellent opportunity for you. So one of the things that we hear on or the expectation that a society's put down is that it is the government's responsibility to educate us, and we kind of feel like it's always been that way, because as long as we've been alive, it has always been that way, but it hasn't been. And I think I wanted Nick to kind of give a kind of a history lesson on education in the United States, and when exactly did the Department of Education come into existence? When exactly did the government start really getting involved with education? And what did we do beforehand?
Nothing. And we just drooled. We just drooled all over each other. No, I mean, so education was being formalized was not common for a very long time in the U.S. People educated either in homes. Frankly, that was a very common way for people to educate, or they would educate at a local schoolhouse, which would be a community of people would get together. There would be a little building where the kids would go. You're talking a handful of children. I mean, you're not talking a lot. They would go, all ages, all grade levels, whatever, would sit down together, and they would do various lessons. They would learn. A lot of the teaching was from the Bible, because it was a book that just about everybody had in their homes, and it provided a lot of reading material. But after some time, education started to get more formalized from the state. And I don't know when exactly it started, but you can see it coming through the middle of last century is where it really picks up a ton of steam. And the explosion of the public school system through the Department of Education was something where we saw local control of schools start to shift towards a more federalized control of schools. And we see that push today. I mean, that's still going. Obviously, we have the federal government trying to push through things like critical race theory. They don't have an easy mechanism to force states to do it, but they have a lot of levers that they can pull to kind of push things into curriculum that get then adopted by all of the states due to just sort of the economics of it. But it's really important to remember that some basic principles of how government power works in the United States, how we believe in the West freedom and power should work. The right of the state to educate children is borrowed through the 9th Amendment from the people. The Constitution has to enumerate powers in the government, or for the government to have, and the right to educate isn't in there. They borrow that. We gave it to them. We said, okay, we're going to get together and have the government sort of support this system of education and make it a little bit bigger and better. But that comes from us. And this is the founding sort of idea in the homeschool cases that were won really about 30 to 40 years ago that allow the homeschooling system that we have. And a lot of the stigma around homeschooling kind of comes from the sort of old ideas about it, a lot of government propaganda about it, and the fact that a lot of homeschoolers were freaking weirdos. They were, because it was a fringe movement of people who were defying sort of the traditional idea of how education was being done. I mean, I say traditional, but how this predominant idea of education was being done. And at first, it wasn't entirely legal. There were families that literally they were threatened with truancy fines. They were threatened with jail time. They were threatened with having their children taken away. And they ended up fighting. And there's a huge organization called the Homeschool Legal Defense Legal HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Alliance, I think it is. And they're the people who fought for this. And again, the argument was the right to educate is a right held by parents, and schools borrow that. They borrow that power. Like everything in our country, it has to come from the people. The government can't do something that we can't do ourselves. So that's.
Dude, I think I actually know one of the families that had one of those big lawsuits that they won. If there's a Bat versus New York, if you ever run into that, that I knew that family. We were in the same homeschool group as them, the Children of Mary, because we were a Catholic homeschool group. So you have to bring in Mary's mom as the the Messiah's mom is what I'm going to call it.
So Papist tricks on over there at the bottom right.
But yeah, so this idea about homeschooling comes from first where schooling came from. It happened either in the home, through a private tutor, or through some local community schoolhouse. It blew up, as everything did when we expanded the administrative state going through the middle of the 20th century. And then now we're at this weird place. One of the main things to also remember is that there's this insidious nature about public schools, in that public schools worked for a really long time really well. And that's why homeschooling wasn't so prominent. It wasn't so prevalent. There weren't these weird political issues being injected every single where you turned. I mean, heck, I went to school through the 80s, and sure, there was some stuff, but we didn't have anywhere near what kids are facing today with these sort of heavily progressive topics coming in. And so, you know, when you talk about going back even a decade before that, and there's almost nothing. The schools are they're just there doing English, math, science, geography, you know, these sort of traditional topics that you've got. Now, schools are changing dramatically, and we see the results of it. We see parents looking towards different educational opportunities, but they're really just looking back. They're looking back to where things came from. So I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but I hope it kind of helps frame things, that all of this government's power to implement any of this education stuff comes from your right to educate your children at home. We have strong legal precedent recognizing that.
No, that did exactly what I wanted kind of put out there. I mean, because we've kind of created this industry of teachers now, where, you know, I don't know how it was when it was like the Little House on the Prairie schoolhouse, how you kind of sourced out a teacher. But
you had a woman who was at home with time who would go teach. I mean, that's really what you did. A mom, a couple moms, maybe. You know, you had systems, private systems, like the Catholic schools would spring up. They would have nuns educate children, things like that. But really, you had someone who wasn't working, which was traditionally women at the time, just being there and working with the community to educate the schoolhouses. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's where it is. I mean, we went from there to, the college I went to is a teacher's college. And there was a time, I don't know if it's still true, that if you graduated from Longwood and you were in the Richmond, or if you were in the Virginia state, or the state of Virginia, and you had that degree in education, you went to the top of the the interview list, the resumes. You were immediately considered, just because of all the outreach and everything they did. But they specialized in it. But every school now has got a program for teachers. And when you're mass producing it, you've talked about it, Nick, about lawyers. It's just because somebody has a law degree, that doesn't mean that they're smarter than you. That doesn't mean that they're smarter than anybody. It just means that they know something maybe about the law. They've got a document saying so. And the same thing, and it costs a lot less money and requires a lot less effort to obtain a teaching license. And next thing you know, you are now responsible for the shaping of little kids and adolescents' minds. And I don't want to say that all teachers are bad. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I know a lot of very good teachers. Like I said, my mom grew up my mom has been working for the school. She's getting ready to retire this year. 30 some years she's worked in the school system. So I've been around it. But at the same time, I also know that there's a ton of drama in an elementary school. There's a ton of drama with teachers. They're 20 something, mostly 20 something women, and they've got their own drama going on in their lives. And
there's an unnecessary amount of credentialism where it's like, oh, you've got a degree to be a teacher, so you should be a teacher. It's like a lot of the people, I'm 23, so a lot of girls I graduated with are now teaching your kids. So it's like, that should scare the hell out of you. You shouldn't be like, oh, that's great. I'd love for this 22-year-old to teach my children. It's like, if anyone's more qualified, it's the child's mother. That should just go without saying. She's got the credentials right there. She's the kid's mom. So
yeah, follow the teacher to the club and see what she can teach your kids after.
Terrible. I know a lot of these girls. I know a lot of these girls that work at the elementary school down the road. It's like, I know them. I know their character. It's not high. I wouldn't be too giddy to send my kids off there. Just saying.
Dude, when I was in junior high, my last year of junior high, Lakeville, Minnesota did junior high a little weird. It was 7th through 9th grade rather than 6th through 8th. And so then we had 10th through 12th for high school. So 9th grade, we actually started the foreign language classes, and I took French because I'm gay, and then but the Spanish teacher.
I don't know why you're.
That's where he learned how to be late.
So both the French teacher and the Spanish teacher were by far the hottest teachers in school. So it didn't really matter which one you took. Just don't take German. But I remember distinctly one day the Spanish teacher, they were doing, they'll bring in a bunch of stuff to help, you learn words. Like you're like, oh, look, it's a shirt in French or whatever, right? The Spanish teacher holds up a pair of jeans. They're her jeans, and they don't have a crotch at all. Like, and she looks at him like, I can't believe I grabbed these jeans, right? That's what she brought to school with all these little ninth graders, and all of the guys in class just immediately never stood up again. They're still sitting to this day. But like it's ridiculous. And then you realize, oh yeah, she's like 26 and single. I mean, these are people, right? We put them on pedestals because they're teachers, but they're not machines.
I thank them for their service, to be honest.
I was like, he's not serious.
Make a TikTok video. It's time for another TikTok video. And
yeah. So it's just there. We forget that these are real people, with real lives that are really young. A lot of times, like you're saying, they're just coming out of college, and they're supposed to go in and teach kids how to live and function. It's like most of these people don't know anything about life or function when they start. I mean, sure, you'll get teachers who've been in forever who are great, but my goodness, what we put in the hands of these people just because they got a 4-year education
to share their identity with the kids too. They're very willing to be intimate and explain all these different details about their sex lives or their sexual identities to kids. It's like, is this really what you want? These are the people you want teaching your kids.
I wonder how much social media has had an influence on that, because like I don't ever remember a teacher being too personal with us with their live intentionally.
Well, now with holidays like National Coming Out Day or things like that, they feel really comfortable just like being like, yeah, I'm a lesbian and I want to talk to you guys, a little bit about that. Does anyone have any questions?
We know Miss Gym Teacher.
They get off on the attention.
Yeah. But we've got, a lot of these teachers now, they came up in the era of Facebook, and I mean, I think that they're too old for MySpace now at this point, but the era of Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, where they're just sharing, everybody's throwing out their business everywhere. And so I wonder how much of this is, I just share all of my personal information with all the strangers that I know on the internet. Why don't I just share that with the kids that are in my class? And you've got a captive audience there. And not only that, it's like what Nick said, when we're kids, it's amazing. You think about the kid, how old your teacher was when you were a kid and how old they seemed, and how old they would seem now at the same age, and going in and meeting teachers as a parent, meeting with teachers. And I'm like, we're the same age. Like, I think I recognize you from school and whatnot. But when you were a kid, it was like the teacher was in charge. She was in charge. Even for me, the rule breaker, always going to the principal's office, I understood, the authority came from the teacher. And so much of when they say something, they say it with the weight of the education system. I'm here in school. I'm here to learn. What she's telling me, why would she lie to me? There's no reason anybody would lie to me because, that's wrong. We teach people it's wrong. Or I don't know that this might not be inappropriate. This is just different. And if you don't have a support structure at home, which lots of people don't, it's parents that are asking questions. What'd you learn in school today? If it's like, oh, here's your iPad, go spend whatever time you have before bedtime, doing whatever. And I don't really care about what you're doing because I've also got my own face in a phone. Kids don't have that method of talking to parents, and then you have disinterested parents, and now we have basically the family structure begins and ends with the teachers.
And combined with that, this overemphasized focus on identity and identity as a validation and valuation of a person. People are now at this point where what they are is as important, if not more important than who they are. And it's way easier to convey what you are than who you are to someone in a TikTok video or a tweet or whatever. So, you throw pronouns in your bio and that's what you are, right? Like you put down gay, trans, pansexual, hetero, whatever you put down in that bio suddenly it confers all of this meaning and puts it into you without anybody ever having to find out. And so I think that's going into what you were saying, Stu, about these parents, or not these parents, these people with the social media sort of pollution, that they're willing to just share all of this stuff, where normally we would have thought, okay, this is a lot about you, but now it's share everything about you in as little sort of archetypal way as possible. I'm coming out to you as X. It's like, well, why? Like, what does that actually tell me about who you are? It doesn't tell me anything, because you've got one gay, you've got Milo Yiannopoulos, right? And that means something else. And then you have another gay, you have Kurt Eichenwald, and they're completely different gays, right? So what's happening here? What does just being homosexual tell you about Milo Yiannopoulos or Kurt Eichenwald? Nothing particularly important at all. But that's what is made to be the most important defining characteristics of people now. And yeah, that's what we're starting to see teachers just share all over the place.
Right. And that's hard enough for us as adults to try to digest. What's the difference? What is the identity here? This is confusing for us. Imagine being a 6-year-old. Imagine being a 10-year-old. Imagine being 16 and with all the hormones and changes going on in your body, that you're, angsty. And when you were my age, you were listening to grunge, and then you get a little bit older, probably Raph's age, you were probably listening to My Chemical Romance and other sort of emo music. But, because you don't know what else to do other than rebel against your parents. But again, if you're rebelling against your parents, where is the authority that you do see? Oh, well, my teachers who are so different from my parents.
I wonder what the following generations are going to look like, because you see rebelling against your parents in like the 60s. It's like, oh, I want to have sex and smoke weed. I want to do that. That's cool. And now it's like parents are like telling their kids, have sex with whatever you want, be whoever you want, so they're already like, how do you rebel against that? You know what I mean? Like now the rebellious things are the norm. The parents are going to raise their kids with.
Return to tradition.
That's sort of one of the trends. I don't think it's like the primary trend that's happening, but they're like, in order to be a rebel, you have to actually become a Christian lifter and have a family. Like that's.
You see how many people are like flooding to the traditional Latin mass.
Yeah.
And how many people are like, they don't want to do the modern thing. That's like the new edgy. The new my parents don't understand me is, oh, my parents don't get why I want to go to the traditional Latin mass. They don't understand. And
my parents don't understand Latin.
They don't get it.
They don't know.
Imagine being such a boomer that you don't know Latin.
They want me to go to the Norvis Ordo.
That's another good point. Like the boomers, they were all about like, don't label me. and all it seems like everybody now is like so hyper fixated on like labeling.
Please label me. Please label me.
And like you must know every label. Like you cannot know like a single label. And even if you're not aware of the labels that you may not be, you're still not, pigeonholing someone far enough, and you become socially ostracized if you don't do that. And I can't imagine being a child having to deal with that like for 40 hours a week. Like it's your job to both learn the curriculum and then also deal with this very incredibly strange social experiment that's happening right now.
Yeah. And I want to go ahead and apologize. I am not keeping up with this chat. I haven't had more than 20 people in a chat before. Okay, so I'm trying to, and I'm trying to keep up with a lot of good commentary from my guests. So I'm not keeping up and responding to y'all's chats. But Sandy said, timeout. Can we swerve back to homeschooling? I shared this with young peeps who are considering homeschooling. We're going to get back to that, Sandy, but that's part of what we're talking about right now is the problems, kind of identifying the problems within the public school system and why it's a problem. Because let's face it, if the government was doing a good enough job with the education system, there wouldn't be that much need for homeschooling. But again, why would you consider homeschooling if the alternative, which is relatively less expensive, less time consuming for you put your kids on a bus, they go to school, they come back and they're educated, and you don't have anything to worry about. That's easy. That frees up your time to go do other things. However, why is that dangerous? It didn't feel like it used to be. When I came up, we didn't have an identity I never felt like I was being taught to dislike other people in my classroom. It was very much hey, we're all in this together. That's not what we're teaching now. We're teaching all sorts of different directions and different political things. And this is stuff, regardless of what political bend you are, you should be concerned with, because you don't know what's being fed to your kids at this point. And it's less on benign, watered down, very, very standard teaching. And now it's what your teacher has decided that they're going to teach your kids. Because this is my problem with standardized testing. It's very standard. It shouldn't be that difficult to get your kids to pass standardized testing. So what else are they teaching in class that is filling up that extra time? So we'll get back on there. That's
Or are they teaching? Are they teaching anything?
Well,
that's another avenue. Is like you could have indoctrination, or you could have just unfettered free time, and it's going to turn your kid's head into mush.
Well, what you have in public schools is this. First of all, you have a time. You have too much time for these kids to actually learn what they go through. And anyone who has either homeschooled or been homeschooled knows that on a good day, you can get through an entire lesson, maybe even 2 days worth of lessons in about 2 hours. I mean, it really doesn't take that long to go through the daily work that you would do in any school setting. If you have either a self-driven student or a teacher who is there to help them, just kind of get the gist of the lesson and then go. And then if they're focused, and kids aren't always focused, someday it's 2 hours, someday it's 10, but they will burn through an entire thing. Public school, you can't have the flexibility. So you always have this 8-hour block, and you have everything regimented out into these sectioned off sections. But you have this other problem in that you don't have one-on-one time with the kids, which spans out the amount of time necessary, because the teacher has to address multiple issues from multiple students throughout each particular period. And what ends up happening is you have the majority of kids are in this big chunk in the middle, and then you have some accelerated students, and then you have some behind students. and the accelerated students are bored, and the behind students are trying to catch up or are disengaged because they're so far behind. So the teacher has to then split whatever attention there is amongst these three groups. Well, the middle group that's running at standard is going to get zero. They have no time for the teacher's attention, or the teacher has no time to give them attention. So then they're really stuck between the accelerated group and the behind group. Well, why would you help the accelerated kids get more accelerated when you've got kids lagging? So what you end up with is these teachers with 30, 35 students in a classroom focusing on 5 of them and spending all of that time. And then you have the other 30 students effectively fiddling around for most of the day because they don't have that much work to do. And the teacher's not really doing a full in-class lesson where the work can be done. So the kids are then taking the work that they should be doing during this 8-hour school day home. And I mean, what blows my mind now is when you find out how much flipping homework kids are bringing home. And you're like, what are you doing at school all day if you come home with 3 to 4 hours of homework a night? It blows my mind. It's just a giant time sink. And I think it's really just become, it's a daycare at the end of the day now. That's my impression of public school, is it's a daycare supplemented by parental nagging for kids to do their homework.
Add a dash of social engineering by whatever the teacher decides they want to do.
Right.
And so that's, go ahead, Mario.
You always get nowadays, well, I don't want my kids to be weird. I don't want them to come out odd and socially inept. But have you met like these kids that go to public school? They're like, they've got a gajillion pronouns in their bio. Their hair's purple. They can't make eye contact. They're shifty. They get all nervous around you. It's like, these are not normal kids. So it's like, I don't know exactly what they have socially that homeschooled kids don't have.
And it's really sad. Like there is a legitimate mental health crisis in this country. And I'm talking about like depression and feeling disassociated from your community, not like parents and their children growing farther and farther apart. All of this is aggravated, not aided by the public school system. And the public school system could be good. It could turn it around. It would take a lot of work that I don't think many people have, the fortitude to do. And I think that's probably the biggest factor is creating this huge schism within the family, then the community, and then the nation. And it's all starting off with very young children.
And briefly on that social issue, this is what did this for me. It was after I graduated high school. Actually, I had graduated college. I don't know if I had graduated law school, but I think I was in it at the time. Either way, I was reading a friend's post, and he was talking about the weird socialization of homeschool kids, right? Like, oh, they're so awkward and they're not socialized right. And I thought about it because I had always thought that sort of same thing just at first glance without digging deeper into it. But then I remembered, wait a minute, I'm out of high school. And once I got out of high school, one of the worst things that would happen if you went to like a 10-year reunion or whatever is someone would say, oh, you're just like you were in high school. Literally, no one wants that. That's the death knell of your entire life. Is it if you're the exact same when you're 28 as when you're 18, right? Like, so what happens is when people get out of high school, they immediately start to deprogram and reprogram into how they will integrate into normal human society. High school and junior high are this microcosmic society of monstrosity, drama, and destruction. And if you like translated that into adulthood, you would have actual people's lives being ruined because it'd be careers being over. Just think about what happens in high school clubs, cliques, and sports teams. Translate that to money and families, and it's gone. Lives are destroyed. So wait a minute. Why do we want children to be socialized into the environment which they will have to immediately deprogram once they hit this arbitrary date that they graduate? And once I realized that, I was like, the whole socialization argument about high school and junior high and public schooling is a complete lie. It's a fiction because we don't want people to act like they did. We want them to act very differently. And the interesting thing is homeschool kids often tend to act already how we want adults to act in the real world, because their only interactions or their primary interactions are with other adults in much smaller environments. They're not being socially influenced by kids their age at the same rate as if they're in
And if
public
they're
school.
going to co-ops, they're being influenced by other kids like them. So they're being socialized with other kids that are more mature, and that helps foster what we want to see. So it's like, by homeschooling, you have everything to win. And if you want to combat like the millennial iPad kids, like the generation in front of me, the way they raise all their kids is they slap iPads in front of them and they just sit there and stare at it. If you want to combat that, the best way to do that is to homeschool your kids. It's hands-on, you're actually involved, and you're getting to decide what goes into their brain.
Yeah, everything's kind of switched in that case. I mean, when we talk about the awkward kids of homeschool back in when I was in school, to now the awkward kids are coming out of public school because public school is weird. And now you see, like, and we're having this discussion, right? We're looking at two generations. Raph, you're mid-millennial, older millennial, I guess. Older millennial.
I think we prefer the term elder millennial.
Elder millennial, elderlennial, and Mario, you're a Zoomer, and so what we're seeing, both of y'all are not at all awkward in having conversation with us. You seem like just talking with two regular dudes, right? And that's what we want. That's what normal people, I thought, want to see when we're interacting with coworkers, with bosses, with employees. You want people that you can talk to, and that you're not. I feel like I'm reaching you, right? I feel like I'm communicating with you, right now.
Quite possibly.
And where now you get people that come in and you're like, are you even going to be here in 2 weeks? Because you're going to get upset about something that happened at work for whatever reason, and you're just going to leave because you can't handle whatever's going on. And it's odd. And again, these are worries that you have when you have a kid who's going through school, and you're like, is this going to happen to him? And so, my kid being in public school, I'm hyper vigilant about it now. It's what's learning. I go through the homework with him. I try to read through it. Is like, is there anything weird? Is there any type of CRT going on? Is there any type of Common Core math going on? And then, is he saying again, we're in a really good school system. His teachers are awesome. They handle his IEP very well, which is one of the advantages that you do have with a public school, a well-organized and disciplined public school versus a private school. And I don't know how it compares against homeschooling, but
what is an IEP?
An individualized education plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that seems important.
Yeah. So those are for when, and yeah, sorry about that. Those are for kids who, like my son, has a lot of difficulty paying attention. It's like, so I had one. It was very straightforward. I was drawing in class. That was the only way I could absorb information in the classroom. I had to be drawing. And immediately when I came into a teacher's classroom in middle and high school, when you're, flex scheduling and you've got 4 different teachers a day, you come in and they're giving a lesson and you're drawing and they're like, what are you doing? Stop that. And then the next thing, I'm checked out, absolutely checked out. You put those in place and then there's communication, but you need an involved teacher, you need an involved parent, and you need a school system that's willing to foster that. And a lot of school systems just don't care, just don't have that anymore. Especially if you've got a kid in a city school system, inner city school system.
But that is something to really keep in mind, is that, and this is the important part of public schools in framing things that where I wish we could get society to, I wish we could get society to agree with me on everything. It'd be a much better place. But particularly in regards to what a government school is and what a government anything is, when you think of what you're going to do in any walk of life, for anything you're going to do you ever want it to have the word government in front of it? Like, do you want cheese or do you want government cheese? I just like the cheese, please. Do you want to go to, do you want to go to a government hospital, or would you like to go to a hospital. You take the hospital unless there's no other choice. Do you want to have a job, or would you like a government subsidized income, right? Through welfare or something. You typically want to have the higher income. It's amazing where in all of the aspects of our life where we touch government, we touch it reluctantly. We need it as a safety net, a support net. There's nothing else around. It's you're way out in the country, so it's the only thing is the government decided to do it because private business couldn't succeed out there as easily or whatever. That's when we want government to be there to fill this sort of bottom net, but we never expect it to perform well. Except public schools, we suddenly expect them to be the best thing, which you should always approach any government program, any government entity with skepticism that it's probably the worst option around. It may perform well, but there is a function where government importantly does fill a role, and that is where there are things that markets are not fully able to flush out simply. And one of those is special education. And that's where I think there's a real role for government schools, and where anyone who is homeschooling with a child with special educational needs, you really need to strongly consider what you're doing, because that actually can take specialized training. And weirdly enough, that's where government schools, the right ones, can actually excel. And having a good IEP, having good paraprofessionals who are there to assist students. And again, you got to vet out the schools very carefully, but that's something that's not so simple for a parent on their own to do. And so if your kid has specialized needs, you either need to probably dump a lot of resources into them, and many people may not be able to afford that. Or you need to look towards a government option, but vet the option very well.
Yeah, ask a veteran like myself. Ask a veteran what we think about military grade. When somebody says this is military grade, I don't want it. I don't want it. You want to talk about guns? He's like, well, the AR-15s. If you've got a rifle, semi-automatic rifle that's magazine fed, do you want the Bushmaster, or do you want the standard issue Colt? You want Armalite? Or do you want the Colt or the M9 Beretta? Which I'm not a big fan of Beretta, but it's just kind of like, what's standard issue was the cheapest available and the easiest to make in mass. You're not going to get the highest quality there. And where we used to be a nation built on kind of, if it was American made, or if it was American business, it was made with pride and everything. We really just slap stuff together now, and we outsource everything overseas. So, you're not going to get the craftsmanship and that you used to get with a lot of military stuff that kind of made that military grade name what it is. It's not all that great. It's not all that great. So, all right. So let's talk about, and this will come in with the criticisms for homeschooling. And we've kind of talked a little bit about the socialization part. So we won't really waste any time on that. But let me talk about something, and maybe y'all can offer some perspectives. The pressure that the government puts on homeschoolers to not homeschool, both before homeschooling, because I guess there's a process to do that. I don't know, but before homeschooling and during homeschooling, to kind of say, why are you doing this? We have our own system. Why won't you use the government system? Get the government cheese.
Well, it depends on what state you're in, heavily. So I can only speak to Minnesota, but in Minnesota, the requirement for homeschooling is merely notice of an intent to homeschool. It's a very basic letter. It says, hey, this is my student. We are homeschooling them. It starts when the child is 7. You don't have to register a kid till kindergarten until they're 7 if you don't want to. So you don't have to inform the district until they're 7. But that's all you have to do. We intend to homeschool this student. And that's so you don't get that fun truancy ticket, right? As a parent, when your kid's not showing up to the school. And they know, by the way, that you have a kid and that your kid should be in school. They check the records from the time your kid is born, and they're entered into the system as a potential student. But in Minnesota, that's all you have to do. Now, the school will send you a big freaking packet and say, hey, we need this returned on it. And a lot of parents don't know that's literally like you throw that in the garbage and then you just write a letter that says, this is my only requirement. I must tell you that I intend to homeschool my child and to leave me alone. And that's it. And so when you go back, and I've done this many years in a row, and you go into the superintendent's office and you hand them this one sheet of paper and they look at you like you're a heathen. Like, how dare you not return our giant packet? And you say, yeah, as we've discussed every year, that by law, this is all I'm required to turn in. They hate it. It is very much a shame process. They want to gather information from you. They want explanations. They want to make it uncomfortable. And that's something that if anybody's looking into this, MASHE is I don't remember what it is, but it's Homeschool Educators, Minnesota Association of whatever, homeschool educators. And then the HSLDA, they have all of these references. HSLDA has every state in what you need to do. You need to check out these sites, use the stuff that's out there. It's been done by people who have paid the heavy price and done all of the heavy lifting so that you don't have to use those things, because you don't want to get on the bad end of the state. They will mess with you. They hate that your kid isn't there. Remember that every day your child attends a public school, that school gets somewhere. Back when I went to school 20 years ago, it was $182 a day per student that went to the school if they showed up. And if they were absent, they didn't get it. This is why they have those absence policies that don't make sense. Like, my kid's getting straight A's. Why does he even need to go? Oh, it's because that's how the school gets paid. So nowadays, I'm sure it's more like $230, $245 a student per day. If your student isn't there, that's a lot of money that does not go to paying an administrator. And those administrators get very, very angry about it. So make sure you're always caught up with your legal requirements. They're pretty minimal in most states when you really get down to it, but the schools will lie to you about what you have to do.
If I recall correctly, that case that I referenced earlier with the Bat family, like a cop went to their house and knocked on their door, and one of the teenage boys answered the door, and they had like 8-9 kids, something like that. And so the cop was like looking around, seeing if you could see anything in plain view, and he was like, "Aren't all of you supposed to be in school?" And that's kind of where it started. Like, it was cop harassment, and that's not what government resources should be for, is harassing homeschooling kids. And it's not, like Nick said, it's not that egregious, and it's probably not even that egregious in New York State anymore. But yeah, definitely look up your local rules and laws before you start just pulling your kids out of school, because there's going to be angry people.
Do it right.
Was it easier for your parents were schooling you while they were serving?
Yes, and afterwards as well.
Okay. Was that easier
in Arkansas? I think it's pretty close to what Nick was saying. What were the requirements? I do remember growing up, and since I was a kid, I wasn't responsible for knowing the laws or anything like that, so I didn't pay any mind. But I do remember when we were in New York, there was a lot more. I remember my mom would get very passionate about us passing these standardized tests every year to make sure that we did well against the state school kids. And I have a feeling if we didn't do well enough, we'd start getting cops coming by our house or something along those lines. In Arkansas, it wasn't nearly like that. It wasn't nearly anything like that. I don't remember having to take any standardized tests until it was time for me to start applying to colleges.
When you were in New York, were they still in the Marine Corps at that point?
No.
Oh, okay.
My dad retired.
Okay. Was it easier for them when y'all were in the military? Because, I mean, I know they've got on-base schools and stuff like that, but.
No. It was probably the easiest after both my parents retired in 2003. Okay. I was already well into high school by that time. but having two parents at home is always going to be easier than just one parent at home. But like my mom always had a huge support group. We had the Catholic homeschool group that we were a part of that had like 100 families or something like that at any given time. Like not everybody would show up at the same time whenever we had events, but it was a great group of people to be around. And then, like Nick said, there's extracurriculars that you can sign up for. So, we were part of swim teams and part of, I was an Irish step dancer for 10 years and went and competed in the World Championships of Irish dance in Ireland.
There's got to be video of that.
Nope.
If there's recording of him singing Spanish, look.
if there's video, if you guys can find video of me Irish dancing, I will actually pay you for it, because like it was bad taste to video record other people Irish dancing because you could steal steps and stuff. But if anybody could find that, I would I'd give you $5.
I didn't know that there was such a cutthroat behind the scenes thing with Irish step dancing.
If anybody has video of Raph Irish step dancing as a kid, I will pay them $500.
Get it from when I'm like 15, get it from when I'm 15 to 17. That was when I was like competing at the world stage. That's the best.
Get it at the most embarrassing time. If he's awkward looking at all, that's when you want it. So
that's all of it, though.
And $5. What about you, Mario? Did you remember anything with your parents?
I was going goo goo gaga mode at that time. I was not paying any attention to what my mom was doing. I remember similarly to what Raph was saying about like my mom getting really hard about the standardized testing. And I think my mom kind of wanted to have it over my head that if I didn't do well, like who knows what could happen. We're homeschooled, but I don't think that there's anything to worry about because we live in Florida. So I think it would have been fine. But my mom definitely wanted to motivate me the best I could. Because by the time I was in high school, I did not want to go to public school. I had a lot of friends and I was comfortable homeschooling. That's what I wanted to do. So
I'm thinking about the Florida thing. It's all right. So another one of the criticisms they have or obstacles that they think is, you don't have enough time. And that one seems like a very real criticism. I don't have enough time because it does require somebody to be home, be present with the kids at that time. So you need to be able to carve out, you probably need a stay-at-home parent. I don't see how you do it without one, or unless you're working, you've got some sort of interesting shift work between the two parents for your jobs. But that's one of the things that kind of stopped us from homeschooling. It was one of the things that we had to, when we didn't want to hold our kids back in public school when COVID was shutting the schools down. We were considering pretty seriously, my wife stop working and just homeschool our kids. We didn't have to do that, but I mean, that's when you're presented with we need to homeschool, you're starting to think about, the financial impact of that. And so what does that look like for, I mean, Nick, you, when you guys were running much more on a budget than you are now, how was that? How did y'all come about, putting that together?
Well, we always had a single income household. So that was our plan. That's how we structured our life, was around a single income household, always. So for us, it wasn't that much of a transition. My wife was a stay-at-home wife, still is, except for all of the driving we have to do for kids nowadays. When they're younger, and you're starting out, it's kind of this natural progression, because when they're younger, they're not in as many things. They're not doing as many programs. It doesn't cost as much and it doesn't take as much time. It builds into more and more time, but as it does, they become more and more autonomous. as they get older, you need to check in on them, but you don't need to read to them because they can read themselves. You don't need to do as much hands-on stuff. And so it's kind of this interesting way that younger students take a little bit less time and energy than older, they take less resources than older students, as the older students start getting into the extracurriculars and stuff like that and need more transportation, but they need less attention as they get older too. So it's like this weird trade-off. But again, going back to what Raf and I had talked a little bit earlier about just how quick a school day is when the kid is focused. I mean, you don't need 8 hours of time that happens at school.
Exactly. I honestly, it's in clear memory being homeschooled because I'm 20, I'm 23, so I can still remember it pretty well. But we would be done within like 4 hours. Oftentimes, it would be 4 hours of school, and then that's not even a part-time job. Like 4 hours a day. That's a part-time job right there. So I mean, it can definitely be done.
That's another thing. I was able to have a job like ever since I was 11. I was able to get my schoolwork done, and then I would go do landscaping. Like I basically had my own landscaping business that if anybody found out about, I would start having to pay taxes because I was earning so much money to pay for Warhammer miniatures. And
money left for taxes after that.
Yeah.
There's no money left for anything after Warhammer minis.
That's why you have to shh.
I can't afford gas for my lawnmower anymore. I can't afford a lawnmower at this point because it costs the same for a miniature as it would be for a new lawnmower.
It was like I was landscaping when I was 11. Then I started working at a library when I was 15, and I worked full time pretty much as close to it as I could without like breaking any laws. And so that inculcated like a love for building something, like earning my own way in life, and also like the discipline of having a job. And I think that is infinitely more valuable than learning how to wait semi-quietly in a hallway for 8 hours a day.
Mario, one of the reasons why I've included you on this discussion is when we had our stream a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about, a lot of respect that you had for your dad for how hard he was working for, so that your mom could stay home and homeschool you and that you would get that opportunity. I mean, I guess he busted his tail for you.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was a sacrifice on my dad's part. And it was a sacrifice on my mom's part too, because my mom had a very successful career. And was the breadwinner at the time when my parents started homeschooling me. So it was a big sacrifice for my dad to for my dad to have to carry that weight, and for my mom to no longer work. But they would both tell you that they're glad they did it and they'd do it again. And I'm so glad they did it because college has been an absolute breeze. Homeschooling was 10 times harder than anything I did in college. And when I talk to people who were homeschooled, they all have the same experience. Whenever I talk to a lot of the guys I know from the homeschool co-ops or whatever else, they all have a similar experience of saying, yeah, college is a breeze, dude. It is so easy. We're not struggling the same way that the public school kids that go to college are, because we've already been doing that for years when you're homeschooled. So college is easier. Honestly, what I was having to learn in middle school was probably harder than what I was doing in college. And I think that they were able to foster a much better education by being that hands-on and by pouring that many hours into me directly and, really teaching me hands-on. So I'm beyond thankful, beyond grateful for my dad for the time and money that he put into my education. And I'm very thankful to my mother for putting a temporary hold on her career to help raise me, help teach me. I owe them a great deal of debt.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed. You talk to people who are homeschooled. I've never spoken to a homeschool person who was upset that they were homeschooled. And I've never talked to somebody who homeschooled their kids who said they regret it. I wish I'd sent my kid to public school, or I wish I hadn't have done this. It's a consistently positive review. It's consistently, I'm glad I did this. I had a great time. It was very fulfilling, very rewarding from the parent point of view and the kid point of view. And I think that really speaks.
School's more fun too. School's more fun. I mean, you had incentive because like I was going to be done with school before my friends were done with school, so I could still hang out with them later. But I already knew, like, if I get done, my mom's going to swing by GameStop and we're going to pick up this video game I want. Or, if I get done early, we're going to go to the local pool, and I'm going to get to swim. Or maybe we'll have a beach day and I can go to the beach and then do school later in the day. Like and the level of field trips, we were able to do all these different fun things, go to the aquarium, go to different museums, experience different things. My parents wanted to take me and see other, just get to experience life, go to other states in the middle of the school year. We could go to North Carolina and I could bring my school with me there. And if we wanted to go to another state and visit family, we could do that at any point in the year. So
I didn't even think about that.
And super
vacation flexibility.
Yeah, so much flexibility in so many ways. Not even just vacation. You want to do like a 2-day trip somewhere, not even a whole week. I mean, you can just do that whenever. So, I mean, there's a ton of freedom that comes with homeschooling. And also, I think that if you really value your faith, and you really care about, Christianity and making sure that your kids, have a relationship with Christ and, raising them homeschooled really, I think really helps steward that. My parents definitely, they're church going people, but by raising me homeschooled, I was also like reading a lot of theology a lot younger than a lot of kids would have been. So that wouldn't have been, I mean, typically, I don't think that is something that you experience much in Christian school, sadly, because a lot of my friends that went to Catholic school know the least about Christianity out of any of the people I know. But with homeschooled kids, for kids I knew that were in homeschool groups, it's the exact opposite. And I went to Lutheran school or Baptist school. I don't know what it was, some Protestant thing.
All Protestants are the same.
The level of education there was a lot lower than homeschool. So.
The other thing I've seen mentioned in the chat, and none of us have brought it up, I don't think, but there is the ability in many states, Minnesota has this, to do post-secondary education opportunities, PSEO, really early. So starting at 16, if your kids are homeschooled, your kids can go to a community college and take college level courses, get college level credits on the bill of the government. Now, normally to do this in the high school setting, you have to have completed certain things. Your schedule has to be right, that you get your certain required classes in for your high school diploma. But for a homeschooler, you don't have to have that. You have more flexibility there. So what you can do is have your kid at 18 homeschooled with 2 years of college under their belt, paid for by the state. As part of the same education opportunities that anybody else would have. But for them, it would be harder for them to work that out in a schedule. For a homeschool family, your kid turns 16, you can get them into college classes. And that's just that's a nice advantage that's there for homeschool kids. And I saw a bunch of people in the chat talking about how they got to go to college early and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a great way to do that.
One of my best friends is 20 years old and is graduated college already, from just being able to graduate early with homeschool. He's already been out of college I think he graduated when he was 19.
That's awesome.
With college.
That's such
and now
get it over with as early as you can, so you can start.
And now he can just kind of he can take some time to just explore what he wants to do. Like what does he want to do next? He can take some time to kind of consider. Okay, I've got a 4-year degree. I can go start teaching now, or maybe I can do this, or maybe I can do that. Maybe I can get an internship here. He's got a lot of time on his hands. He's not halfway through his 20s, so he has the time to make those decisions. So, I mean, homeschooling is convenient from every metric except the fact that a parent actually has to do it. And I think that's the disadvantage there, is just that somebody's got to have the time and the ability to teach their kids. But
And
if it can be done, the positives are just exponential. Bless you.
Thank you.
That's a perfect segue into the next criticism or obstacle, is I'm not smart enough to do it. The ability, like I've got to take the time away. Okay, we have an ability. We can set the time away. A lot of them think I'm not smart enough. I didn't go to college. I'm not an educator. I'm not, what do I know that, what do these teachers know more than me because they've been trained to be teachers? Why I can't do that.
I mean, I'd say, do you seriously assess, do you really think that a 23-year-old that's fresh out of college, that shows up to school in yoga pants, do you really think that you think she's smarter than you? You think she knows more how to teach your kids than you? I don't know. Seriously assess that. And if you can say that out loud, that you think that she's smarter than you.
I would think even with the specialized, right, I think even with the specialized teaching, you've got, they're trained to teach a classroom, and they're trained to teach what the curriculum says, in a way that works for most kids, I guess. And then they got to split their attention among other people's. And maybe I didn't get an education degree, so I don't know. But to me, it's just like, you graduated from high school. You should be able to, if you graduated from high school, you should be able to teach a kid elementary school level work at least. So but that's what my mom said. I could never homeschool because I'm not smart enough to do it. Well,
yeah, and that's a myth. First of all, the myth is dispelled the moment you speak to any teacher on earth, even the best teachers.
Exactly.
And I'm not calling them dumb by any means. I had tons of teachers who I actually really liked or really respected, or both. But it doesn't matter. This is a thing. When I teach at homeschool, and I'm teaching high schoolers at the homeschool co-op, or when I used to do, I taught Sunday school at church until I started a YouTube channel where I drank and said a bunch of profanity. When I would teach those kids about going into college, and this is college, it's like, these people are PhDs with specialized knowledge about a subject, but it's really just an idiot with an opinion like everybody else on the planet. I mean, these aren't special people. They have specialized knowledge in a particular field, and that's great. But if you get the history teacher to talk about literally anything else, the odds that he's a bumbling moron are still the same odds as encountering a guy at a grocery store who's a bumbling moron. They're really not special.
Half as interesting.
Exactly. And that's, we're talking PhDs there. When you get down to the public school teacher level, it's someone with a teaching degree who's taught how to teach. And when we say how to teach, they're not actually taught how to teach. They're taught a particular methodology of pedagogy that is in vogue at the time that they go to college. And someone else is going to have a different new way to teach tomorrow. Like Common Core math came out of nowhere. And that was the new way to teach math. Was it better than the old way? I would say no. A lot of people would say no, but some idiot said yes. And that idiot had a PhD, and some other idiots with them had a PhD. And we're like, oh yeah, no, this is a good idea. It's really, really important to remember that all of these people that you encounter, they're just normal people that have some sort of training, but that training isn't in whatever subjects you think you don't know. They don't know either. These people don't know half the stuff. My psychology teacher in high school was a global studies major who had taken Psych 101 once. That was it. That was their entire psychology education. And they're teaching psychology in high school. It's like, well, what are you teaching? There's a curriculum. The curriculum takes them through it. It takes the kid through it. And guess what? The curriculum will take you through it too. And the curriculum that's out there right now, there's so many to choose from. I would highly encourage people considering this to go to like MASHE, which is the MASHE conference in Minnesota is in St. Paul. every year, and you can spend $1 trillion on all the different curriculums if you want. You can check it all out. They'll tell you everything about it. Or, there are tons of private curriculums. Kevin Sorbo's wife has developed an entire homeschool curriculum. And from what I've heard, it's very, very good. It's all there, and it will guide you through it just the same as it will guide any elementary teacher when they get put into a random class that they were never trained to teach. So that's the beauty of curriculum. And you can do it. I've met some of you, and some of you are pretty dumb, but you're not that dumb. So just so you know, chat.
I'm not dumb enough.
I'm not talking to you guys. I'm talking to the chat.
You very well could be talking about me, though.
I like
he's a lawyer, so obviously he's smart, right? We're going to appeal to authority.
I like.
No, I've met too many lawyers.
I like how he mentioned like they're being taught what's trendy at the time, how to teach that way. I like how he mentioned that it's not like there's like one timeless way to do it, and if you just got this degree, then you'd have all the answers.
It reminds me of the Randian part in Atlas Shrugged when, everybody's because he wrote something, he's got to be smart. It's kind of like that. We studied it because somebody wrote it, so it must be worth reading. Instead of thinking for a second, does anything he say actually make sense? Is this actually worth anything? Or
most of the people
is it an unbreaded manifesto?
Most of the people on Twitter that have like
pure
education.
PhD.
Most of the people on Twitter that have like PhD in their bio are like some of the dumbest people you've ever met in your life.
Like Karl Marx, Judas
the
Iscariot,
colossally worst takes.
all PhDs.
Real and true.
If you really want to find the dumbest people on Twitter, just look for anybody who's got lawyer in their title. I mean, and they'll have the dumbest legal takes you'll ever find. It's amazing. It's amazing how highly qualified people are some of the stupidest people you'll ever meet. And one final point about just teachers in general. One of the most valuable things my con law professor taught us when we were in school, he said, remember that we're in a classroom and I'm teaching you out of a book. If you want to learn how to actually litigate, there's 1,000 lawyers who would walk circles around every single stupid teacher in this entire school. That's why we're in a classroom. So it's the same is true. Teachers get this sort of noble bent, but everything that they do teach, there's someone out there who does it infinitely better. And when I say someone, it's everyone who does it professionally will do it better than the teacher. You do it better than the teacher too. And if you teach your kids, one, you're just as smart, if not smarter, as any teacher that you meet. And two, you actually like your children. Like you actually care about those kids enough to homeschool them. Those teachers, they may like your kid. They may remember, 10 years from now, it's so great. Little Johnny grew up or whatever. That's neat. But they don't love your children, right? Like you do. They don't have any investment in their success beyond, they succeeded in my classroom. Great. You care about them every day because if they don't come home, it's your worst nightmare. So that combined with just literally being breathing, you can do it. That's all it honestly, that's your qualification set. You breathe and you love your kids. Everything else is there for you.
You've got actual incentive that they do well. You're actually invested. They're not.
Are you going to homeschool your kids, Mario?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's not something, it's one of those things where it's like, as a Christian, I don't know exactly how long into marriage kids will pop out, but the thing is, if I can, I will, and I plan on it.
Yeah. And miscellaneous, I just noticed this one in the chat. Doctors are saying gender isn't a thing and they have medical training. And so it's,
yeah, exactly.
Anybody with really half a brain understands to just go, all right, stop. But they've got a degree, they've got a PhD, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education. They must know what they're talking about. There's no way anybody slipped through the cracks when the cracks are the size of the Grand Canyon. No. So what are the so we've talked about the criticism. That's really the majority of the criticism. I mean, we talked socialization, the stigma of being a homeschool kid. I mean, it really just takes, if you're interested in homeschooling, this is a good, I think this is a very good stream to get a lot of information about, but going out and just trying to find somebody who's homeschooling and talk to them a little bit more. And, because if you're going to, I think what Nick's talked about with these co-ops, what you were talking, what Raph and Mario were talking about, getting involved with the community of other homeschoolers is important anyway. So you might as well make those connections if you're interested in going that route.
Definitely prioritize making sure your kids are socialized, because I do like Nick was saying, there are some homeschool people that are weird and they weren't socialized well. And you can avoid that if there's not enough kids at your parish, then, find put them in a Bible study or something, put them in find soccer or football or baseball, because it's no guarantee that at your church, you're going to have a ton of kids their age. It's no guarantee that. So go out of your way and find that for them. My parents definitely did, and I appreciated it. So.
What did discipline look like for you guys as kids when y'all were, did your parents act differently?
Well, my parents had no problem disciplining me and raising me and punishing me, if that's what you're asking,
did it change when you were in the classroom setting, I guess?
No, they're your parents the whole time. It doesn't feel like there's a switch where they go from parent to teacher at all. It's just, parents, with the way I was raised, my parents weren't trying to be my buddy. They were trying to be my parent, and there was a very clear hierarchy of that's my mom and dad, and I'm down here, and what they say goes. So there was a very clear, I was always kind of on, and then when we're having a good time and we're just goofing around, then there's less pressure there. But in general, there was no real difference between, parents teaching and parents in general.
Raph, were you able to actually do any coloring with two Marines? Did you have any crayons that weren't in the pantry?
No, they were all immediately consumed upon purchase. The car ride home, my dad is like,
oh, you gotta dip into the Crayola box and it's like they were French fries or something.
Yeah. No, I guess this is gonna be different, experiencing it from a
Marine Corps discipline.
Well, no, discipline is gonna be different for every child, I think. So I remember they noticed very, very early on that I like to help out. So I remember when I was 4, and I very distinctly remember my mom saying, "Hey, you're real big now, and I need you to be my helper. So you're going to have to help me be a good example and help me with your younger siblings. Okay." And she never had to spank me again. Now, some of my other siblings who did not like being helpers, they got to get spanked a little bit beyond 4. But I don't know. It was, I guess it's just going to be individualized, figure out what you're I was actually talking to my wife yesterday about this, and I told her it's sort of like finding your partner's love language, that stupid thing that everybody makes you read that book. You find your partner's love language. You're going to have to find each individual child's discipline language, figure out what works for them.
It was easy for my son. For my son, he's just like me. So all I got to think about, yeah, my parents, look, I think my mom last week gave me a spanking. I mean, that's, I was beat. They never stopped beating on me, but I would take the L. I would take the pain from a spanking all daggone day. Don't put me on timeout. Don't put me in the corner. Don't take away my sensory perception, because 10 minutes feels like 10 hours.
I was the same way. The punishments that resonated with me were the ones where I couldn't socialize. I couldn't be out. As a big extrovert, if they just made me go to my room.
Yeah. What's your
currency?
My
DS, it was so over for me.
so I was like, so my son was the first thing when he got really out of hand. It was just like, okay, you're going on timeout, and then it's really bad. And I was like, okay, you're going in the corner. So he figured out what the corner was. The second time I went to put him in the corner, it was like trying to put a cat in water. He was like, everything was sticking out, and I mean, he was pressing against the wall. I get that's a little
This one comment said nobody puts flawed man in the corner.
Oh, they did. I could go. I've got stories upon stories about how bad I was as a kid. But I mean, that was all mostly in a classroom setting. You took me home, and I mean, I would get out of line a little bit, but it was mostly in class. So
hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it is bedtime at the Rafture household. But
okay, well,
nerd.
I know.
He's got a well-disciplined schedule. He's a responsible human being without as many
9:49. It's 9:49. It's bedtime in 1 minute.
He's on Central Time, I think, too.
I've got an early bedtime.
Man's got to get up in the morning, run 6 miles, power lift, save America, one task at a time,
and pray.
He has to write 3 articles. He has to write 3 articles to meet his
he's gotta go
job
through
requirements.
Got to go through the litanies.
3 articles. Are you saying I'm a teacher?
No, a reporter, maybe a journalist.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I can't believe you missed my Kurt Eichenwald joke. I hate all of you. I'm so mad.
I was tracking on it, but nobody else laughed, so I didn't want to be the other guy.
But you left me out, so you left me to dry. Thanks.
I know you can handle it. You've got the clout. You can carry that L. The rest of us can't. And with that, well, Raph, first off, thanks for joining. You, Mario, all of y'all are welcome on anytime. But Raph, thanks for coming on, sharing your experiences, and we'll probably talk some more when about it when your kid starts homeschooling. If I've still got a stream, we'll see how this whole YouTube thing works out. And but you have a good evening, sir.
Take care. God bless.
God bless. But with that said, folks, if you're watching, by all means, if you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. I do like to bring guests on, but when it's just me talking, when I'm talking about a specific issue, when I do my Bible read and reacts, one of the things that I'm lacking that I'd love to get is more chat interaction. Most of the time, it's just me and Fig Newton and a couple and 1 or 2 other folks in there every once in a while coming in and giving their input. But I do this thing where I'm reading through the Bible from beginning to end, right? And I'm doing it a couple verses at a time. And just kind of as I'm reading through, it's like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking it's saying. And one of the things I notice is that a lot of people read scripture a different way. And some people read it in a very weird and stupid way. But other people have different perspectives on things. And so I'd love to get something going on where people are kind of reading along, be like, yeah, okay, when I read this is what I think, or I think you've got it right. I think you've got it wrong. Like I said, the way I start this stream, I'm not a seminary student. I didn't go to do any of that. I'm very much a lay person when it comes to the Bible. And I really appreciate kind of that. I love and respect the folks who go to seminary, learn theology, and really educate them on that. But I love just being in the Word and looking at it from kind of the average, every man perspective of looking at the Bible and getting different people's perspectives. Because what a lot of things that you'll see, a lot of things that you'll see is people from different denominations, from Orthodoxy all the way to maybe some Pentecostals. But you can find righteous men and women throughout that spectrum, regardless of where you land. Me personally, I'm a non-denominational Protestant. Some folks like Mario will say, "Well, you're just a Baptist," but
hey, I lightened up on that. I've lightened up on that.
I know. But I like one of the things I think that we should encourage is kind of that, some of that horseplay, some of that Twitter horseplay and other things where we're picking at each other for our theology, but at the same time, we love and respect each other because we all love and respect Christ and the fundamentals. Because one of the things I've discovered is we have a problem within all the different church denominations and institutions, from the very loosely what I call free range chicken to the non-denominational types to the hyper organized and institutionalized Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodoxy. They've all got somebody in there who's like, well, we really should read the Bible like this because we don't want to exclude this person because their feelings make them think that they should be okay. Everybody should be okay with the thing that they're doing, as opposed to saying, no, we all struggle. Church is a place for broken people trying to get better. We all have our vices. We all have our shortcomings. We're all trying to, we don't lower the standard. We can't just say, well, God's law really shouldn't apply because we just don't feel like we can make it. And that's where you get modernization. You can talk to some Lutherans. There are some Lutheran churches like Hans Feeney, very great guy that me and Mario have a lot of respect for. He's great. I did almost a 3-hour stream with him. And he's one of the, just one of the best people you can have a conversation with. And he's got it. He's down with the word. However, you can also go to, what is the ELRC? Not the ELRC. That's the Baptist thing. What's the other Lutheran church?
The ELCA, I think.
ELCA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a trans queer woman pastor, and we pray to the God of many genders. And the Lutherans have to deal with that, and that's a struggle that they have, and they don't like each other. And so I know I'm getting off on a tangent about this, but this is really kind of a plug for my show because I know that there's a lot of eyes on it right now. So I mean, one of the things I've seen, because I watch Nick's stream, I don't stay up late and watch it live. I get that while I'm working, so I'm listening to it in the background. But what I hear a lot of people about is there is an audience and there's a desire there for people to want to talk about Christian topics or discuss things. And I would love to have that where maybe I lead the discussion and I'm talking, but I'm getting input from a chat, from an interactive group. So if you're interested in that at all, I come on here about 8 to 8:30. Between 8 and 8:30 at some point I start my stream. I'm very much like Nick most of the time. I show up when I show up. I've got a life. I've got other priorities. This is not my gig. I'm not doing this for money. So I show up when I get the kids sucked in.
Unlike me.
Considering how many people came over from Nick's show, I guess I got to check him out now. I have no idea who he was until now. So,
oh yeah, highly recommended.
Yeah, you watch a night show and get some daily unbreaded.
Oh, yes,
join the church, the church of unbreaded.
It's an inside thing. That's some inside baseball for his church. But yeah, Mario, I highly recommend the stream. It's hilarious. I have to listen to it with headphones on, at least until I get an office to myself. When I'm working from home, I'm usually here. I've usually got it on, and it's replaced Rush Limbaugh. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh a lot, and that was my 3 hours. But it was some of him, and then there was a lot of commercials. With Nick, you get about 4 to 5 hours of constant content, and I like it. And again, you're getting views. You're helping him harvest views. You're helping him harvest likes, and it's good to see somebody succeed at that level, and that you get to be part of that audience. So,
well, thank you.
But yeah. All right. So I guess to wrap things up, because 2 hours that's a good discussion. Where do y'all see the future really for homeschool going? I feel like it's going to explode, at least in the near future.
Do you want to start, or do you want me to?
I'd like you to start. Go ahead.
Okay. I see it going to the moon. Because racism. Because I read that in an article that it's all about racism, that's what homeschool is. It's a way to keep the blacks away from the whites. And so because it's about racism and America is racist, I think it will take off and be tremendously popular. This new concept of homeschooling that just came out. But that being said, no, I think as we see the collapse of the public school system away from just sort of a traditional or classical pedagogy of the basics of education. Can you read? Can you write? Can you do add good? That's what it started as. That's what everybody kind of needs to function in daily society. And now we're replacing that with this agendaed stuff that you cannot get around. Parents are being disrespected and degraded. And thank God for COVID in the one way that it put a bunch of kids in the home and it put a bunch of parents in front of the screens that their kids were looking at. And they went, wait, I'm sorry, what? What are they teaching you? What is this? I mean, I know when I ask you what you learned every day, you always say, oh, nothing, Dad. And I just let it go. But now I'm looking at what you're learning. And all I want to do is set the building on fire. So I think the more of that happens, the higher the push of schools into this sort of progressive socialization, which is a pendulum that's going to take decades to swing back if it does ever. That's going to push people into homeschools. Plus you've got internet, iPads, YouTube. I mean, I hate to sound weird about this, but what can you not learn on YouTube? I mean, literally anything from unqualifiable experts, from people you could never have access to. You can go watch Harvard lectures for free at YouTube. Like, this would cost you $150,000 a year in tuition, and you could just go watch it for free. You can learn literally anything with all of the options that are out there. We're going to see this sort of explosion, I think, of homeschooling. And why wouldn't you? Imagine someone went and just put together a homeschooling playlist, and they just went through and they picked out lectures from PhDs on, here's your homeschool history playlist. Or they just gave you like Dan Carlin's hardcore history to listen to or whatever. What can you teach your kid? If you wanted to teach your kid, if like when my kid gets to World War I in history, I'm going to make him just listen to Dan Carlin's the Great War series. I'm going to make him and listen to Sabaton at the same time, so he understands everything. but I mean, that's it. With all of the resources in literally every household, there's nothing but people to understand what benefit they have to their children, and if they have the time, they're going to take it. And we're already seeing the numbers effectively double since COVID, and I don't think it's going to trend back down, personally.
I think if libs of TikTok keeps posting what they post on Twitter, and they keep putting that shit out there, I mean, they're doing the Lord's work, honestly. I think you just all you really have to do with these people is put a mirror up. You don't have to insult them. You don't have to call them names. You just put a mirror, show them their own reflection, and they recoil in fear. And these are people that if you just put a spotlight on the shit that they're teaching and the shit that they're pushing to your kids, to your children, that God gave you authority to raise and to take care of, you should already be on your way to write that homeschooling letter, and you should be well on your way. And I don't want to simp for libs of TikTok too hard, because they've done some cringe liberal stuff too, ironically. But I've been very glad with just putting out the just showing what these people stand for by just giving them a platform, by platforming their BS and letting parents see it. I think that's all it really needs. Because like Nick was saying, all it took to get a whole lot of people to homeschool during COVID was just seeing what their kids are being taught. Similarly, I think if we just keep putting a spotlight on them, keep showing what they're pushing, show the LGBT flags they have in their classroom, how comfortable they are talking about sex and all this other stuff. Like, this is not stuff that your kids need to be hearing about from them. This is stuff they need to hear about from you. So,
yeah. And one final thing, I hate to bring it up, but every Uvalde, right? Every Newtown, every Parkland shooting, you go, why am I sending my kid into a place that won't protect them?
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah, that recent development about not entering the school. It's difficult.
It's twice. That's the last two That's the last two of this style of school, because there are school shootings all the time, tend to involve gangs. They don't get categorized the same way. But Uvalde and Parkland, both times, officer on scene, won't enter. Gunshots occur before, during, and after the officer sitting there. And you're like, if they're not going to, if they're not going to protect my kid, why would you send them? I can't imagine.
If their biggest grievance is just that your kid might be slightly socially awkward and a little aspy if he's homeschooled, like that's a really low price to pay to know that they're safe and are not going to get shot. I mean, I think it's a pretty high price to pay so that your kid can smoke weed in 8th grade, that he could get shot potentially.
Yeah.
And now that's not off the table. That could happen. This happens in Florida. It happens everywhere.
Yeah, and it's remarkably rare. It's honestly remarkably rare when you consider. Someone sent me this stat the other day. There's 115,000 public schools or something like that. Plus you got another, 30 to 50,000 private schools in the country. And a shooting of this type happens once every couple years when it really could happen any day of the week. There's nothing preventing it. And as we see over and over, there's literally nothing and no one preventing it other than that most people aren't monsters most days. But with that, that's the horrific part of it. You never know where it's coming. There's never an actual indication. I guess Ethan Crumbly as well up in Michigan. That one was another one.
I forgot about that one.
But yeah, you there's no way to actually predict this. I mean, in hindsight, we can always go and say, oh, well, the feds knew this or someone knew that. It's like, well, they know a lot of things, but knowing the thing and being able to identify the issue when it's about to happen are two different things. And so one way to avoid it entirely is, you homeschool. And then there's much less chance for your kid to be at one of these charnel houses where the government doesn't step in to protect them and won't allow anybody to protect them.
And it's not just the shooters they won't protect them from. They can't protect them from other kids in there from just your regular everyday violence. Like just, we've seen gangs beat up on a kid. The teacher can't stop that. You've got to wait for a resource officer so your kid gets, pummeled. And like I said, I've been a bully and I've been bullied in public school when it was at a public school where you didn't have to worry about that much. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But then you see some other schools where, it's several kids just taking a kid down and just beating on them. And what do? They've got a concussion and you can't keep them safe, and nothing makes you feel more powerless as a parent is getting a call from when your kid is away somewhere and saying that they got hurt and you can't be right there, or you can't fight off whatever it is that's actively hurting them, or you weren't there to do it. It's humiliating and it's humbling in many respects, and you just don't want to repeat that ever again.
Yep.
So. And one of the comments said, homeschooling doesn't make your kid aspy. And I agree with that. I don't think that that's the case. I'm saying that if that's your biggest concern, I'm saying there's far greater concerns if you're sending your kid to a public school. That was the point I was making. I wasn't trying to say anything inflammatory.
That's okay. We can be irreverent here about that kind of stuff because look, I'll describe the.
It's on brand. It's on brand.
I'll describe the difference between the orthodoxy and charismatics as a spectrum of other denominations in between, because it just feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, this guy says be inflammatory. It's good for subs. So true.
Well, I'm not going to sit there and try to milk it for that. But again, when you're sitting around having a discussion with people in a good, if you're in a small group with people in Sunday school or whatnot, or whatever, and you're having a discussion with a lot of people or a handful of people, and you're just being real with each other, you can make jokes, off-color jokes to a degree, and not have to worry about it. We're all here to kind of just lay this kind of stuff out and not have to worry about somebody getting too offended with it, because we're all adults here. We should be able to handle adult conversation. That's why I say there's only we don't take the Lord's name in vain here on this channel, but if profanities fly, they fly. I don't give a shit about it.
It said, Nick, teach them the grift. What's the grift?
Oh, the grift is just how you squeeze some dollars out of that YouTube life.
Oh yeah. If I ever get monetized, I'm probably just going to donate the vast majority of whatever proceeds I get to.
Yeah, I'm not.
Charities.
Yeah, I donate it. I donate it to me.
Yeah,
I
donate that to the poor Dave over here. Poor
I would feel bad. I would feel bad having a channel that's largely centered around faith. It's different. It's different for Nick's talking about law. It's very much profession based. Mine's talking about faith, and one of the worst things you can do is try to enrich yourself. Monetarily by that. So I would feel very weird. I'll go.
No, you got to get that. You got to get that Maddie Nottage money.
Creeflow and the Creeflow dollar and the Kenneth Copeland and all that other stuff. You're not going to see that here, folks. You're not going to get any of that.
One of the highest super chat earners in the country is Maddie Nottage. She's a prophetess. I hate her channel. I hate her so much. They do faith healings and people send in like money for faith healing and for prayers and stuff. And it's like, and for prophecy, I should say that, and it's like, I don't like you're extracting poor Black people money. I don't trust your organization at all myself, but
I need it. I need that. Yeah, exactly. The Kenneth Copeland, Kevin Hart he just made it so cheap for me. He made that airplane so cheap for me.
Oh, man. Give me a private airplane. I won't promise you salvation. I'll just promise you comedy. But give me that private jet. That's what I want.
All right, we're going to find out tonight how real Flight Simulator is. We can get the old Toy Story meme. I'm not aiming for the truck. And then you get the two towers. We can make those irreverent jokes here. Anyway, I'll wrap the show up. Mario, Nick, thanks a lot for coming on board and sharing your insights. Y'all have vast amounts more experience with homeschooling than me, and I feel like I would point somebody in this stream's direction because of the way that y'all kind of broke things down, you guys and Raf as well. So I'll say goodbye, and we'll talk a little bit more after the show ends. But guys, like I said, subscribe, come see me. I'm generally streaming definitely Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. This week's a little bit different. I've had a lot of stuff going on with work, and but generally you're going to see me Tuesday through Friday while softball season, and then after that's done, it's usually just Monday through Friday. I'm just 8 o'clock Eastern Standard ish, and then I stay for as long as it takes for me to where I feel like I'm done. It's usually about an hour-long show. So, all right. With that said, everybody, subscribe, share with anybody you think might be interested. Love you guys. Thank you for showing up and being part of the chat. I promise you, next time I will be reading from you guys way more than
follow me on Twitter.
Follow Christian Mario on Twitter. Follow Rekieta Law on Twitter. I know most of y'all probably do. Watch his stream. I was hoping that you were going to be done with this Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing by this. This is why I kind of planned it after Memorial Day. I thought we were going to be done. I
scheduled you, and I was supposed to be on Jesse Lee Peterson's show today during the daytime, but this thing isn't over. So yep. I can't wait, man. I cannot wait. Yeah, so I had two shows. I was like, of course they're going to get done over the weekend before Memorial Day. I mean, why the heck would they come back after Memorial Day? Why wouldn't they just get, and then the judge is like, oh yeah, we're not doing anything Saturday and Sunday. F.
Yeah.
Is
get them out of there.
To my people here, I'm about to put it up on Locals and Twitter, but I am not doing a show tonight. I'm going to hang out with Lady Rackets. Again, I thought that Johnny Depp would be over today for sure. So I did not expect to have really late stream last night, full day stream today and looking at, potentially a full day stream tomorrow. So I'm not doing a show tonight, but I will have, 7:45 a.m. We'll be up there for the Verdict Watch tomorrow.
This was your night show.
Yeah, pretty much.
I haven't finished the night show. I heard it got pretty crazy there towards
the
the
one
end.
last night.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a good show.
All right. So if you're not following him, if you're like Mario and you're a Rekieta Law novice, by all means, follow him on Twitter. But the best place to follow him is on YouTube, and you can support him best on Locals. I've got all of their information in the description below, including Eric Rolon, who wasn't able to join us. As Power Keg Greg, he moved. He moved to another state, so he's been out of studio. He was thinking about possibly coming on. That was the plan from the beginning, but he was going to try to get on with his through his cell phone. He wasn't able to, but he normally co-hosts with me every other Tuesday. And tonight was a normally scheduled Eric Rolon, Stuart Davis, show where we generally try to point out different places in where preachers are acting woke and stupid, and we kind of try to correct what they should be teaching, because sometimes it's that obvious that a lay person can make that correction. Anyway, all you guys, thank you for being here. Have a good night and God bless.